What's good? It's Woog. Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford is just around the corner. This is going to be on Netflix, and this is pretty much the biggest fight of the year. This is enormous. This is a fight that a lot of people, including myself, really didn't see coming. Like, even after Terence Crawford beat Errol Spence Jr., I didn't think they were going to do Canelo versus Crawford at 168. Crawford himself had said that there were weight divisions for a reason. But here we are. This fight is about to go down, and I want to look at the historical aspect of this fight. And I also want to give you just one of the reasons why my gut is really telling me that Canelo probably wins this fight. And this isn't my official prediction, but I'm going to really just kind of spill what I'm feeling about this fight right now. Now, is it the most important, relevant fight that could take place in boxing? No, this isn't. I mean, it's ultra important in the history of boxing, but it's a different kind of importance. It's like a dare to be great, can one legacy topple the other type of importance. But this isn't like Spence versus Crawford, where it's like, we have to find out who the preeminent welterweight of the era is. It's not that. It's not even Canelo versus Triple G, where it's like, who is truly the man at and around the middleweight division for this era, where you had Triple G pretty much reigning supreme at middleweight, and then Canelo gradually coming up and eventually fighting Triple G. Now, that type of importance would have been more applicable to if Canelo would have fought David Benavidez. That would have been that type of important, where it's like, okay, who is truly the man at 168? But Canelo versus Crawford, it's not any of those things. It's not Sugar Ray Leonard versus Thomas Hearns the first time when they were both young welterweights. It's not that. It's not De La Hoya versus Trinidad or Tyson Fury versus Usyk 1. This doesn't establish those types of questions that need to be answered. This is almost such a gap to bridge for Terence Crawford, to where I am kind of shocked that not only are the odds as even as they are with Canelo a slight favorite, like I'm talking a minus 170, but that you have experts like, I think Teddy Atlas, like, I don't think he's given his official prediction, but I'm looking at what he's saying leading into what is going to be his prediction video, and it looks like Teddy Atlas is kind of thinking that Terence Crawford's going to take it. Again, that's not official as far as I've heard, but I hear a lot of boxing experts that I really enjoy, really respect, going with Terence Crawford. But check this out. Canelo Alvarez cannot afford to lose to Terence Crawford. Let me say that again. Canelo cannot afford to lose to Terence Crawford. Legacy-wise, yes, he's still pretty much the golden goose money-wise of the era. Nothing will ever take that away. And you know, nothing will ever take Canelo's resume away. He's already done what he's done. He's won the fights that he's won, and he's lost a couple of, a couple of fights that he's lost. And some thought that he should have lost one or more than he's officially lost, but that's a whole nother conversation. But what I am saying to you is Canelo's legacy cannot stomach a former lightweight who then became undisputed. He had a belt at lightweight, then became undisputed at 140, became undisputed at 147, and then won a belt in one fight at 154, and then is gonna leap 2 divisions to challenge the great Canelo Alvarez. And not to say that Terence Crawford isn't a great fighter. He's a Hall of Famer. He is one of the greatest fighters of the era, no question. But Canelo cannot afford to have the older, smaller guy come down from below and come up and defeat him. Simply can't have it. Hagler couldn't stomach Sugar Ray coming up and beating him, arguably close fight, but beating him at middleweight. We all saw what Canelo coming up. Yeah, I know he had 1 or 2 fights, but he fought like Amir Khan and Miguel Cotto at middleweight. Those aren't middleweights, but Canelo eventually, and he fought Chavez Jr. at a catchweight, I think 164. But Canelo going up and eventually beating Golovkin did a number on Golovkin's reputation, his legacy. Instead of talking about one of the all-time greats, we are still lamenting, some of us are still lamenting on the decision of that first fight, because I feel like that those first two fights between Canelo and Triple G changed the course and the trajectory and the story of both those guys' career. Canelo Alvarez, even though he's already had 60 something fights in his career, he's done a ton of fighting, and he is post-prime. I think it's overstated how post-prime he is. That's my opinion. But Canelo at 35 cannot lose to the smaller and older, nearly 38-year-old Terence Crawford. That would have meant if Crawford pulls this off, Canelo would have lost when Canelo was 22, lost to what, a 36-year-old Floyd Mayweather. And then some would argue that, oh, well, Canelo was too young. He had a lot of growing and learning to do. But still, usually the 22-year-old beats the 36-year-old, right? That's how this is supposed to go. The young lion eats the old. That didn't happen between Floyd Mayweather and Canelo Alvarez. And if Canelo at 35 loses to a nearly 38-year-old Terence Crawford, that is not a great look legacy-wise. Again, it doesn't take away from what he's already done, but the story would go from Canelo being the most iconic and the most celebrated, the most this and that fighter of the era. You know, Usyk has done what he's done, and I'm not going to litigate where he stands in, you know, iconoclast of the era. He's right there with anybody. But it goes from Canelo being the first name that you have to mention of the era to Terence Crawford potentially leapfrogging Canelo Alvarez in all-time great status. Even if Canelo has done more with the entire legacy, if Terence Crawford can already have had the career that he's had to this point and then punctuate it by doing something nearly unthinkable, very, very few in the history of boxing have ever done it, but then going up multiple divisions and beating not any old 168 fighter, not even any old 168 belt holder or champion, but going up and beating Canelo Alvarez. That would pretty much allow Terence Crawford's name, reputation, legacy to leapfrog that of Canelo Alvarez. It would be that damning to the legacy and career of Canelo if he loses to Terence Crawford. And this isn't, you know, the young eating the old. If this was Canelo versus David Benavidez and Canelo said, all right, I'll fight David Benavidez, and Benavidez ends up beating Canelo, well, that's how the circle of life in boxing works. The young eat the old. That would not do the same thing to Canelo's legacy as Terence Crawford coming up and beating Canelo would do to Canelo's legacy. This wouldn't be Rocky Marciano beating Joe Louis. This isn't that. And this isn't a young De La Hoya beating up on an old Chavez. No. And you know what? Canelo knows this. Canelo knows how important and how much he must, and I mean must, beat Terence Crawford. He understands that. I think a lot of his fans understand that, because the narrative would be all over the place if Terence Crawford is able to pull this off. And yes, Canelo has been in more wars than Terence Crawford. You could say that he's got more miles on the odometer than Terence Crawford, but age is age, size is size, reputation is reputation. Canelo cannot allow that to happen. I think he knows that. I think he's coming into this one with perhaps a fear, and maybe fear is a strong word, but hear me out, with a similar fear that he might not have experienced since he first fought Triple G, where he knows the importance, he knows the weight and the magnitude, and he knows what the level of the opponent is. Canelo is respecting the hell out of Terence Crawford right now. I think that Canelo is damn well aware of what could happen, not only in this fight, but to his legacy if he allows Terence Crawford to beat him. I mean, look, if let's say Oscar De La Hoya would have beaten Shane Mosley in their first fight, and say he got the decision that he should have gotten against Felix Trinidad. If he would have had another few fights and retired, we would have been talking about Oscar De La Hoya being an all-time great. Now, in terms of prime De La Hoya at his best, he is one of the best fighters I've ever seen in my life. And I would give him a good shot at beating anybody at or around the divisions that he was operating in if we are talking about that version of De La Hoya. But his career went on like Roy Jones's career, unfortunately, after narrowly beating Antonio Tarver the first time, after capturing a share of the heavyweight title against John Ruiz. If Roy Jones would have retired right there, we would have been talking about Roy Jones being an all-time pound for pound great. You couldn't have a pound for pound all-time great discussion without mentioning Roy Jones. Not so much the case, because time went on and he collected those knockout losses. If Canelo loses to Terence Crawford, I don't think we would be talking about Canelo's all-time greatness in the way that we would be if he beats Terence Crawford, or if he were to have never fought Terence Crawford. Yes, there would always be the specter of, well, he ducked David Benavidez. There will always be that if he never fights David Benavidez. But that you could kind of argue your way around. If Terence Crawford beats Canelo Alvarez, the idea is that this whole time when we've been watching their careers in parallel, Terence Crawford's always been better than Canelo Alvarez. That's the kind of conversation that we would have to start having, and that would be had if Crawford pulls this off. Just like, look, when Crawford destroyed Errol Spence Jr., whether Errol Spence was, a shell of himself by that point, whether the car accident had finally taken its toll and caught up with him physically, regardless of the version of Errol Spence that we got in that fight, the fight playing out in the way that it did just gave life to the narrative that this whole time Terence Crawford was across the street, fighting the Jeff Horns, Jose Benavidez Jr., Mean Machine Kavaliauskas, and then Kell Brook, Amir Khan before that. That whole time when we saw Errol Spence collecting one belt against Kell Brook, and then the WBC belt against Sean Porter, then the WBA belt against Ugas. That whole time, Errol Spence was a top 2, top 3 pound for pound fighter in the sport. And we were wondering for, ever since Crawford came to welterweight, which was Errol Spence's division at that time. The idea is that, and I'm not saying that this is true or untrue, but the idea is that no matter when they would have fought, when Terence Crawford was a welterweight, that Terence Crawford would have beaten and was better than Errol Spence Jr. Fair or unfair, that's how these conversations and that's how these narratives take shape. That is exactly what would happen if Canelo loses to Terence Crawford. So I think that Canelo is very aware of the importance, not the who's divisionally the best, of the era, not that kind of importance, but a legacy protecting, way more risk than reward, legacy protecting importance of this Canelo versus Crawford fight is. And that's one of the big reasons why, along with the size and all the other things that are going into this fight, but that's one of the reasons why I think Canelo is going to beat Terence Crawford. I think that we are probably going to get the best Canelo that we've seen in the last few fights. He knows that he desperately needs to come out on top in this fight. And again, that's why I use the word fear. It's like there is no other choice. I have to win. I cannot not win this. This isn't Canelo daring to be great against Dimitri Bivol, where you lose and it's like, hey, I tried, it didn't work out. No, this is the guy who really has no business fighting you, saying, you know what? Let's just punctuate my career by going up multiple divisions and taking on Canelo and then beating Canelo. Again, this isn't Terence Crawford going up multiple divisions to fight John Ryder or Christian Mbili or anybody like that. No, this is Canelo Alvarez we're talking about. And again, I keep on pointing to the recent instances that we've had of these fighters daring to be great, going up multiple divisions. It didn't work out for Guillermo Rigondeaux against Lomachenko. Didn't work out for Mikey Garcia against Errol Spence. Didn't work out for Kell Brook against Triple G. Didn't work out for Amir Khan versus Canelo. Damn sure it didn't work out there. And that was, think about it, that was Amir Khan trying to fight Canelo, I think at middleweight. Amir Khan was really at his best at 140. He did pretty well at 147, but he's fighting Canelo at middleweight and did pretty well in the early rounds, then got knocked out viciously. But yeah, it didn't work out for him. It didn't work out when Jermell Charlo tried to fight Canelo Alvarez at 168, coming from 154. If Terence Crawford pulls this off, there's going to be hell to pay for Canelo Alvarez's legacy. Again, fair or unfair, that's how I see it. But yeah, I'm sharing with you my gut instinct. My next video is going to be the actual prediction, but I think my gut's telling me that Canelo probably beats Terence Crawford. I just don't see how Crawford is going to withstand, the body shots. And again, Terrence Crawford is supremely skilled. And I agree with Teddy Atlas too about the intangibles. And on top of all that, Terrence Crawford is just a mean MFer in there, but so is Canelo Alvarez. I think that when we make this out to be the supremely skilled and IQ Terrence Crawford against the bigger Canelo Alvarez, that's just not accurate. Canelo Alvarez is where he is because he is supremely skilled. I mean, look at his defense. Look at his chin, a legendary chin. This is a lot to overcome for Terrence Crawford. I mean, this could go where Terrence Crawford is having some marginal success. It might be 2 rounds to 2 after 4, and then Canelo catches him off time with a nice jab that Terrence Crawford doesn't expect, and then Terrence Crawford's got an orbital bone issue. That's the kind of freaky stuff that happens when you've got fighters from multiple divisions apart fighting each other. You get weird stuff like that happening. Ask Kell Brook. Ask, De La Hoya when he fought Bernard Hopkins and got hit by a shot. I mean, we see that a lot when you get hit by the liver shot that doesn't even on its surface look like it was the most vicious shot, but you've got the fighter just writhing on the floor in pain, looking like they don't even care if the ref is counting to 30. You could count to 100. They ain't getting up, and they're not even concerned with getting up. They're in that much pain. But yeah, multiple division jumps historically don't go well. Tell me the instances where the Terrence Crawford, where you're older and you're going up multiple divisions. I mean, this could go really badly for Terrence Crawford. As great as he is, this could turn out to where we're in the 4th round and it's like, yeah, I don't see how this is going to turn around for Crawford. It could be one of those scenarios. And I'm just saying, if it is, don't be surprised. I am, again, surprised that so many people who know boxing very well, are going with Terrence Crawford. And that's really just a testament to how great Terrence Crawford is. He's got a lot of people thinking that he could beat Canelo Alvarez. I'm just thinking, let's really just take a step back and look at what we're talking about here, because I think that this fight can play out whether Canelo wins by decision or by stoppage. This could play out to where, Terrence Crawford gives a valiant effort, then loses, by a few rounds, but we walk away from it like, yeah, this, I should have seen that coming. Duh. I feel like this could turn out like that. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. But again, I'm just here to say there is a lot of historical weight, but it's not that kind of divisional importance. This is more, again, legacy protection for Canelo Alvarez and a legacy, I mean, what do you call it? This would just launch it into orbit for Terrence Crawford, to where you might not be able to have the pound for pound all-time great discussions without mentioning Terrence Crawford if he beats Canelo Alvarez at 168, becoming a 3-division undisputed champion and being a champion at lightweight 135, 140, 147, 154, and then 168 undisputed. Like, that's what we're talking about here. That's the kind of importance. And that's why, again, I maintain that Canelo Alvarez cannot afford. This isn't just any fight. And this isn't just any super fight. This is a fight that Canelo's legacy cannot stomach him losing. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on all that in the comments. And again, I'm going to give you my official prediction and my official breakdown in the next video. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.